Good afternoon. Let me know. Hey, already, thank you for the donation for $20. I want to talk about that. I'm very excited to start fall gardening. Today it was 82 out. I spent the whole day out there so far. Can you guys hear me first? I have this fear that the microphone doesn't work. Hopefully we're not locked. Sounds good. All right. How many people are sick of the summer heat? So I will talk more about Freetown Farm 5 and Freetown Farm in a bit. That's where I volunteer. I'm a board member. That's where I donate. I appreciate the $20 donation that already came in. Any money that's donated here during my live events all go to the Community Ecology Institute. They have the initiative Freetown Farm. So let's talk about fall gardening. I'm very excited. I'm tired of the heat. If you watch my ramblings, you've seen my garden's kind of beat up. I'm kind of beat up. I'm kind of tired. But this week, the cool weather's rolling in. It's really time for fall gardening. If you guys are exhausted, I encourage you to try and get some fall gardening going, because I think you'll feel like you missed out if you don't get something growing. So I want to talk about what exactly fall gardening is. I know it makes sense. You garden in the fall, but there's a strategy behind it. So as we're talking, please ask questions. Go ahead and think about the cool weather crops you want to grow. When I ask for questions, just throw them out there if I don't cover that. And I'll talk about when you can seed start the different cool weather crops for the fall. But let's just get started. So I'm in Maryland Zone 7, East Coast. I have really 3 seasons. I have the spring, I have the summer, and then I have the fall. So I have cool weather crops, warm weather crops, and then I have cool weather crops again. And August, even though it's hot, it's 95 degrees here, it's humid, sometimes 90% humidity, you can actually start planting your fall crops now, get them growing, and they'll really be set up for that cool weather that rolls in come September here in Maryland, and you'll have a great, fall garden. So let's start with the temperatures. That was what's most confusing. I'm going to look through these questions real quick too. So Urban Chicken Mom asks, will I have a discount for future raised planters? If you mean the metal beds, that's outside my control. So no, I know they do different sales, but nothing that I'm aware of for that. Crafty Mama Creations, how do I fix leggy seedlings? You can't really fix them. We'll talk a little bit about why some of the fall crops now are getting leggy. You can give them more light. If you're growing indoors, move the lights closer to your leggy plants. They should kind of fix themselves, but they're going to be leggy and floppy for a while. Oh, let's see. One more question. These are all good questions related. Nisha Meta says, can I start seeds? Cabbage, peas, cauliflower, zone 5, frost is October 25th. So you definitely can start peas. Start pea seeds now. We'll be talking about that. Cabbage and cauliflower can be a little bit tough. You can give it a try. You want shorter day cauliflower, shorter day cabbage. Really now, maybe you'd want to be doing transplants for the cabbage and cauliflower. So we're going to cover different ways to be starting the fall crops. So let's begin as soon as I clear my throat. Never fails. All right. So this is what's most important. So right now, generally speaking, you have to figure out in your garden zone when that cool weather is coming and what exactly is that cool weather. So right now, your soil temperature, the top 4 inches, easily 80, 90, 100 degrees on the surface. That's what warms the root systems of all your warm weather crops. That's why they take off, they grow well. When that soil temperature gets way too hot, your tomato plants shut down, your pepper plants shut down, your cucumbers shut down. That's why you see flowers drop. The plants stop producing because they're getting the signal through the root system and through the warm soil that it's just way too hot. We're going to go into survival mode. So they shut down. Same thing happens to your cool weather crops. So when you plant a lot of cool weather crops in the spring, they love that 50-degree, 60-degree soil temperature. But when it starts raining, soil temperature starts going up to the 70s and 80s, the plants get the signal that it's time to flower, to bolt, to produce seed. And then you just really can't grow the cool weather crops anymore. I have this problem with broccoli and cauliflower. I can start it indoors in the spring, get it outside as a transplant. They look good. The heads start forming, but the heat comes too quickly here in Maryland, warms up the soil, and that nice, dense broccoli head that's still small loosens and begins to flower. So I can't really grow the broccoli here in spring, but I can grow it into the fall. And what's the difference? So spring, cool soil, the soil becomes hot, temperatures become hot, your cool weather crops bolt, can't grow them anymore. Just buzzing through the questions real quick. Darling Ebony, yes, you can start kale by seed right now. They can take a frost. So all these crops that we're talking about, even though your frost date might be October 7th, might be October 25th, we're only worried about the hard frost. I'll talk about that as we go on. So you can get them started. Most of your kales, dwarf, curled, red Russian, you can start now by seed. All right. So now, of course, I lost my thought. All right. So now I remember. So right now the temperatures are 80 degrees, 90 degrees, 100 degrees on the surface. So you're looking for really timing it so that over the next 2 to 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, your 95-degree temperatures in your gardening zone, maybe 100. When you got to look on a weather.com, or you got to look on a weather map, historic weather map, and find when your temperatures start dropping into the lower 80s during the day, maybe upper 50s and 60s at night. That's what you're trying to get to with a 2 to 4 week gap. And that 2 to 4 week gap means we're planting in the heat of the summer. And that's going to give your fall crops, a lot of them, we'll go over them, it's going to benefit them. They're going to germinate quickly. They're going to establish great root systems. They're going to start to grow nice greenery, be set up, and then the cool weather comes, starts cooling the soil, slows down the plant, and then you're going to get great production. Carrots, I have a hard time growing in the spring because the ground is frozen. It's cold. So if I put out seeds, they don't really germinate. Now your carrots are going to go crazy, germinate really quickly. Your peas are going to germinate really quickly. You're not going to have to worry about them rotting. Like when you put them out too early in the spring, it's too cold, it's too damp. So there's a great benefit. So that's the strategy, is that we're trying to get the seeds started now, 2 to 4 weeks before the temperatures really start kind of coming down. And we're going to have a great fall garden. And we're going to go over a bunch of different plants. Let me just see if there's any questions here. I just see John in 7B's using 50% shade cloth. I'm a huge believer of shade cloth now. I'm going to use it all the time. I'm going to use it to extend my cool weather season in the spring next year. And I can also use it now, cool that soil temperature down, and get some of the cool weather crops growing. So if you're more south, where the temperatures are up in the upper 90s, hundreds, maybe that cool weather is not coming for 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, you can use shade cloth, cool your soil down, and get a lot of the brassica plants started. They tend to need longer times to grow. All right. Any quick questions before I go on to the second part? Amanda Strain will be going over a bunch of different plants to grow. And if you guys can leave in the chat, what are some of your favorite fall weather crops? I'm just going to cover the basics, but for a good 15 or 20 minutes, we'll just I'll take questions and we can go over different crops to start in the fall. And I'll go over, when to start them and give you any tips that I have. But please, you guys are smart. You help everybody out. Give your tips. I learned from all of you too. All right, so let me just check my notes here, trying to stay organized somewhat. So the fall crops love the 50 to 60 degree soil temperature. They like day temperatures or ambient temperatures of 60 or 70 degrees. So that's what we're shooting for, maybe in the upper 80 or lower 80s or something like that. Anyway, so let's just say the temperatures are going to come here, in 3 weeks. I can start planting a lot of stuff by seed, and that's what I'm going to encourage you guys to do. So couple of things. I did just look at the temperatures. So this week, I'm going to go over these numbers real quick. And this is what you're looking for. This is what's most confusing to people because you can't really match what I'm doing, even if you're in the same zone. Because if you're in Tennessee, we're in the same zone, but it's a little bit different. So next, or starting tomorrow, so the next 7 days, it's going to be 72 during the day, 61 at night. Next day, 78 during the day, 59 at night. Next day, 81 degrees during the day, 60 at night. And then the next couple of days are going to be 83, 84, 85 degrees and the lower 60s. That cool temperature is rolling in. Before you know it, you're going to have like a 60-degree day. You're going to get a rain. The rain is going to be cool because the atmosphere is cooler. That soil temperature is going to start dropping quickly. And as soon as that happens, you're going to have a flourishing fall cool weather crop garden. Does that make sense? Anybody else have questions before I go on the temperature? That's really important, understanding the top 4 inches of your soil. Let me just see if we have any questions here. Pak choi is a good one. Pak choi, don't start that as a transplant. It bolts super fast. And when the pak choi root system is in a little plastic cell, it gets too warm and it just flowers. And it flowers sometimes when it's like that small. You want to direct seed pak choi, and you want to do that when it's much, much cooler. It's too early to do those in August. Those would be seeds that you actually plant when the cool weather has arrived. It's pak choi or bok choy, sometimes it's called. Brenda Chapman, if you're kind of following the temperatures, you can sow collards by seed. And then in New York, it just went down to 48 degrees. So yeah, it's cool weather time. So let's take a look. So a couple things. Remember that your cool weather crops can take a freeze. And this is important too. This is what people don't understand. So most of the cool crops, the leaf can freeze. It can freeze at night. It can stay frozen for an hour, even 2 hours. It doesn't matter. Maybe just below freezing, maybe the upper 20s, the leaf freezes. The warmth of the day comes. That leaf looks terrible. It's kind of wilty, but it comes back and it's perfectly fine later in the day when you come back from work. That's because the cells of these cool weather crops, when they freeze, they don't get disrupted. They don't burst. Like a tomato leaf, if it freezes, the cells burst, the leaf is dead. That's why the warm crops can't take the frost. So you might get a frost in October, maybe you get 2 or 3, you get a couple more in November. They can take that frost where the leaf just freezes and then the leaf thaws. That's perfectly fine. It's when you get to those heavy frosts and you get consecutive days and maybe the days aren't warming up enough to really kind of warm the soil. That's when you lose your plants. When the top of the soil freezes, of course, the leaf will freeze. Right where the stems kind of meet the roots in that upper inch of the soil, if that freezes through, that usually kills most of your cool weather crops. Not all of them, like broccoli, Brussels, cauliflower, cabbages, kales. They can take a really heavy freeze. They can survive longer, but that's just generally speaking. Check the questions real quick. So you don't have to worry that the first frost date is October 7th, and now all your cool weather crops are going to be dead. They can grow through the rest of October into November, as long as those frosts aren't creating a prolonged, deeper frost or freeze that really affects the stem and the root part of the plant right at that top inch of the soil. You're really good to go. So that's why I think it's so exciting. One of the beauties is when you get that first frost, usually that white butterfly, let's say, is hibernating, although it's really killed off, is gone. So your cabbages, your broccoli, your cauliflower, your kale, all your brassicas aren't going to get those green worms on there that are chewing holes in it because the frost has wiped out the butterfly that lays the eggs on there. Now, of course, you got to take care of them, until that happens. But there's so much benefit, in my opinion, to fall gardening because the pests and the diseases go away. And it's just like this little miracle period here in Maryland. All right. So where was I? So the temperatures. So cool weather crops, we know it can take a freeze. So let's start with About three, and I've got plenty of videos right now on my YouTube channel going kind of in real time of when I'm planting these cool weather crops. So I have, I don't know, 2 or 3 videos already called Fall Gardening if you want to check those out, and you can see what I've been doing and you can just match it to your area. So peas, I recommend getting into the ground now by seed. I'm again in Maryland Zone 7. As long as you have room, get the seeds in there. So a lot of people don't know that the pea plant itself, the leaves, the stems can take a frost, but the flowers and pods can't. So you really want to use the warmth of the summer now in August. Get those pea plants growing. Maybe they're getting this tall. Put shade cloth over them if you have to. If it's way too warm in your area. Mulch the surface so the soil stays cooler. Give them a lot of water. Just keep them alive. And as that cool weather rolls in, the peas are established and they're going to grow, flower, and produce peas before that first frost. Yes, the pea plant itself can survive the frost, but it is possible that not so much the flowers, but the pods can be damaged with the frost. And I can tell you that by experience. It doesn't wipe out everything, but you really want to get those peas flowering and producing before that first frost comes. This way you're getting something, and then they can hang on and survive. Any other quick questions about peas? Somebody's waiting to pick up another green stalk. So the garden red green stalk. So there's the rusted garden red. If you vertical garden, you've seen my channel, I work with green stalk gardens. You can find that in the video descriptions of my videos. But anyway, there's a rusted garden red 5-tier tower. There is no plan yet that color back. That's outside of my control, but they usually do it in the fall. So as soon as I know if they're going to do it, I will let you all know. And they do a limited run of that particular color. All right, so peas, if you have a chance, get them in the ground now. And for planting, I might as well go over it. Plant peas maybe 2 inches apart, half an inch, 1 inch deep, and put in as many as you want. You don't really have to over worry about the spacing. They just need something to trellis up. So if you're putting them along, a fence line or some curved wire mesh or something, that's fine. If you're doing a big square, it's about 2 inches apart, do a square, put some sticks in the middle. This way they climb up that, they support each other, the stakes support them. They have hollow stems, so if the wind comes, it's going to break the stems. But get your peas in now. Somebody just wrote, Charlie Doyle, do spinach seeds do better direct sowing in August or in containers for a fall crop? So I think you're talking about seed starting. Spinach, I think, does best being direct seeded. It's another crop too that if you keep a lot of these plants in these starting cells too long, they feel the heat, from the sun baking on the plastic. They feel it in their root system. And even though they're small and they're not at that 60-day maturity, they can still send up a flower stalk and flower. So spinach would be something you could start by seed now if it's about 2 weeks before that cool weather comes. Don't hold, exactly to my 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You don't want this spinach to be put in. I put some in by seed under shade cloth about 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer. And it's getting a little bit kind of leggy, and I'm afraid it's going to flower. So the warmth is just too much for it, even under the shade cloth. Now that my temperatures are coming down next week, next Saturday, I'll be putting in spinach by seed in different areas. I will redo my lettuce too. The lettuce went in way too early, and that will be perfect. They're going to like the cool weather. So spinach and lettuce, I recommend putting them into the ground by seed closer to those cooler soil temperatures. You can start them in cells. I'm going to talk about that towards the end. You just want to make sure when you're starting your cool crops, start them in larger containers, number one. Doesn't matter what size you use. Just something bigger than those small 6-pack cells. And don't put the seed starts outdoors in the southern western part of your yard where the sun beats down on them. Put them on the east north side and just let them germinate, enjoy the shade, and be cool. If you move them to the heat, they're just not going to do what you want them to do. Just checking for questions. Pizza Hut says, my tomatoes ripen quicker by covering them with shade cloth. So I'm covering some tomatoes now to keep them producing, keep them cooler. I haven't noticed them ripening anymore, but I'll keep an eye on that. Anya Mohammed in South Carolina, Zone 7. Is it time for growing in the fall? Is it time for growing in the fall? And does it do better direct sowing in ground or indoors? So, I mean, this is kind of what this, our live is about, to kind of give an overview of fall gardening. I have several videos on my channel right now if you want to check those out. South Carolina, I don't know how hot you guys are, but you're probably a little bit early for fall gardening, even though you're in the same zone as I am. But yes, you want to start planting seeds directly in the ground soon. You can start some stuff in cells if you want to. And just, go out of order a little bit. Now, maybe you have a smaller garden and you have room to tuck in peas or something like that, but you don't have room for your broccoli, your cabbage, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts, all the brassica families. Those are the plants that I would start as transplants, not because they don't do well from seed if you start them early enough, only because you probably don't have room. And I find in the summer, like right now, if I start all those plants by seeds and they just sprout up a little bit, my snails and slugs are everywhere and they come and they just chew them down. So I like to start the brassicas in containers, larger containers, so that they get 3 inches, 4 inches tall. I can put them in the ground and they're going to survive a snail and slug attack. That's just something to keep in mind. Susan Chappell, when should I plant my seeds in South Texas? So you'll have to kind of go what I was talking about. You're looking for 60-degree nights, 80-degree days, whenever that average starts coming back in your area. And about 2 to 4 weeks before that average, you can start planting your seeds. It's very, very hot where you are right now. Yes, Rhett Coley, can Brussels sprouts take a freeze? Definitely. Why do channels rarely talk about collards? Probably because, at least for me, I like kale. Collards flower quickly for me here. So kale continues to grow throughout spring, summer, and fall in my area. Collards, I would have to go twice. They are delicious. No other reason for me except I grow the kale. All right. So that's peas. The next thing that really benefits from planting now are carrots. Carrots can take 70 or 80 days. They can take a frost, they can handle all that. But in the spring and your ground is 40 degrees and it's still frosting and it's still freezing, it's really hard to get your carrot seeds to germinate. You can germinate them indoors, but if you're doing 100 carrots outside, I don't really want to be planting 100 carrot transplants. And they do get messed up because carrots germinate. They send that taproot straight down. That's what forms, a nice straight carrot. If they're in a seed cell and their cells are only this big, that taproot begins to coil. So you're going to get deformed carrots. They'll still grow, but they're going to be deformed. Carrots can be put in now. I put some in 2 weeks ago. Get them into the ground when it's warmer. They can be in the ground when it's still hot for 4 weeks, even 5 weeks. Cool weather arrives. They've sprouted. They're about this tall. The greenery is there. The taproot's nice and deep. Cool weather comes, you're going to have carrots this year. And I find I get better carrot production in the fall versus the spring. Can you plant a blueberry bush in the fall? Yeah, that's the best time to plant a blueberry bush. You pick up your blueberries. A lot of your fruit plants you can put in the ground in the fall. They can manage everything. They'll slowly establish through the fall, come back to life really in the spring, and you've got your blueberry plant. Cat's Wreath Decor. Some people are asking about what they can start in containers. You can start anything in frozen totes. You can do any of these cool crops in totes or containers. Leafy greens can be put anywhere. Radishes can be put anywhere. Broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels, need more space, but they can manage in a container okay. All right. And then just for carrots, some things to keep in mind is you really want a loose soil. You can mix in compost if you have it. You can mix in peat moss, cocoa coir, whatever you have, but you're really trying to get a good 8 inches of loose soil. I have clay soil, so in the new beds, the carrots are always twisted and deformed. They're kind of cool when, kids come over, friends, they pick the carrots, they're twisted, they can look like animals and stuff. But I don't want that. I want straight carrots. So you can loosen up the soil. If your soil's kind of difficult, you can certainly buy carrots that actually are just round. They grow more on the surface. You can grow carrots that will only go about 4 inches deep. So you can pick the carrot variety that best suits your soil type. Thank you, Susan, for donating $5. Very appreciated. And I want to just add again, some of you may have seen it. So the Community Ecology Institute is the nonprofit that I'm a board member of. They have the initiative Freetown Farm, and I volunteer there, I don't know, 10, 20 hours a week or whatever. So I am using all the donations that come in through here to actually help manage and fund the greenhouse. So I very much appreciate it. The money that you are giving through the Rusted Garden, all of it goes to the Community Ecology Institute, and that all then goes to Freetown Farm. Thank you. All right, so we got carrots. The other thing that you can plant now are beets. I love beets. Beets can take a really hard freeze. They do really. And if you're not familiar with beets, the beet seed itself, it's actually a pod. So there's multiple seeds in that little beet. But get them in the ground now. So beets, carrots, peas, I like to put in, 3-4 weeks before that cooler temperature rolls in. Those are just plants that kind of can do well with the heat. I plant beets even into the later spring, early summer for leaves and even a little bit of crop production. So they're a crop that can take the heat. They will appreciate the warmth. They will germinate, do their thing, again, be established for when your weather rolls in. And you can buy orange beets, red beets, cylindrical beets, all kinds of different beets. I highly recommend them. They store well, they stay in the ground well. You can, really get complete use out of them. If you don't actually like the beet greens are wonderful in salads. So that's another reason to grow them. Kohlrabi. Anybody grow kohlrabi? That is my favorite, one of my favorite vegetables. I have not been able to successfully grow it, and I don't know why. I feel like I should be able to grow it by now. So I'm going all in with kohlrabi this week. Buy seed, direct sown. And I'm also starting some in cells on the north side of my house. I'm going to figure out why I can't get the kohlrabi to form a nice ball, above the soil. And if you haven't grown kohlrabi before, it's in the brassica family. I think it tastes similar to cabbage, but the root goes straight into the ground, and right on the top of the soil, this round ball forms, and then you have leaves on top. You can eat that round ball just like an apple. Peel the skin off if you want it, if it's a little bit tough, but then you have got this delicious apple-like vegetable that you can just eat in your hand, and it has a sweetness, I think, between an apple and a cabbage. Yes, Mary, beets can be grown in containers. You should try kohlrabi. I can't pronounce your name, but let's just say Guru. Definitely try it. So I'm going to direct sow kohlrabi now, let it get growing, get established. And what I'm hoping is, it's again, because it's in that brassica family for whatever reason, I'm hoping it loves the cool weather, and that I can just be harvesting kohlrabi through, let's say, end of October through November, and then it should be pretty much done. So when you're struggling with a plant, try planting it in different ways. Plant it in different parts of your garden. Plant it where there might be more sun, some shade. Start some in starting cells, direct sow, and then just kind of figure it out. And you'll be able to, you just got to experiment. Don't get discouraged. So I'm going all in kohlrabi. Another plant that's great to plant now is Swiss chard. It's a wonderful leafy green. You can use the leaves, take them off the stem, use the leaves in salads, saute them down. You can also then use the stems and stir fry, and it tastes a little bit like celery on the stem, but it's kind of unique. So get your Swiss chard in now by seed if you've got, that 3 or 4 weeks before the cold. Now, in saying that, chard, kohlrabi, beets, carrots, if your cool weather's coming tomorrow, you can still put them in as seeds now. You're not necessarily going to lose out. I'm just giving you the seeds now that you can start really early when it's warm, and they're going to benefit from that 3 or 4 week worth of warmth. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, for instance, the next group is the brassicas: broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels, those main 4. So if I put them in as seeds today, they're going to grow, but they may not make it to maturity in time in my area. So I definitely like starting them 3 to 4 weeks earlier before the cool weather really rolls in. And I know that it's confusing. I'm not saying you must do this 3 weeks before. You can't do this then. I'm trying to give you an idea of matching your temperatures that are coming for the fall with when you might put these seeds directly in the ground. You could also start the brassicas in the starting cells, again, because maybe you don't have room to get them into your garden. You grow them a good 6 weeks or so in the starting cells, and then you pop them into your ground when you're pulling out your tomatoes or your peppers or something like that. River Song hasn't had beets sprout yet in 10 days. It is normal. They can take a while. Just keep them well watered. Vicky Ann, my broccoli went immediately to seed and my cauliflower did nothing. So I'm not sure if you're referring to the spring or you started them maybe in the summer. And either way, that can be what happens. Now, if you start them from seed and you still have time, the cool weather should slow down the production of the growth of the broccoli and you'll get a nice broccoli head. Mary Gratz, my Swiss chard is huge. I planted it not in my garden. I planted it on the side of my fence, and I literally have leaves that won't even fit on the screen. They are huge, and I just cut them back before coming up here because I'm weeding all kinds of stuff out. So I've cut the Swiss chard back. I'm going to let it regrow. But Swiss chard is amazing. Does well in the fall, can grow through the summer, can grow in the spring. It's a really wonderful leafy green. Urban Chicken Mama, I do not ferment fertilizers because I forget. And it becomes this smelly mess. So maybe if I was more disciplined, I would, ferment nettle, or I would just let basically leafy greens rot in water, and that decays, give it to my garden. I have enough room that I'm just doing lots of compost. I just keep composting, and that's what I use. Thank you, Rachel Pierce, for the donation. Very appreciated. And Blurry Lights, thank you. Have I ever grown Mizuna? Yes, and it grows quickly. So mustard green, Mizuna would be something I would start by seed when that cool weather kind of rolls in, maybe a week before or something, just to get it going. But it loves the cool weather, does best in the cool weather. So definitely I would grow that. Bentley Seeds is behind me. I am affiliated with them. I'm going to be working with them next year. I love the company. I got to meet them. They are a family-run business. We do sell seeds from Bentley at my seed shop, as well as seeds that my brother and I collect, handpick, fill into packets. So we hope to do more with them next year. So if you go to my shop, you get to see the Rusted Garden seeds, and you're going to see Bentley seeds. Garlic bed question. I didn't see the question you're referring to. So garlic what can I do to prep? Oh, garlic beds. What can I do to prep them? So garlic really likes loose soil, drains well. You can just give it a ton of compost or mix in any organic granular fertilizer that's on sale and cheap. Just mix it into that top 4 to 6 inches. You just want something that drains well so that when it's raining, it's getting colder. They're not sitting in soaking, soppy soil, and your beets should do great. All right. Thank you, Urban Chicken Mama, for donating. Appreciate it. And it means a lot to me. Like we are going to start Freetown 5, and I just put a little bit about that in the beginning of this. I'll go over it again, next time. But we're trying to get people to donate $5 every month, and we're going to give away 5,000 plants and 5,000 pounds of food to individuals and organizations next year. So I'm looking to build, a group of 5,000 that are willing to donate $5 every month. And that's what we're going to be doing. So we'll be doing updates if you decide to sign up for that. We'll be, emailing out quarterly newsletters. So we'll be able to inform everybody about what we're doing. And I will talk more about that before. We actually just set up the text Farm 5, and I forget the phone number, of course, not prepared, but we're changing it over to Freetown 5. And when that's all set up, I'll put a message out here. But I greatly appreciate the donations. I just want to be clear. We use the money to grow and give stuff away. All right, so we got that. So the brassicas, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels, I start in transplants. The tip I want to give you for them is, let's see, I don't actually have any here, but you want a yogurt cup, a bigger starting cell. I sell the larger cells at my seed shop. You just don't want to start them in those tiny 6-packs because, again, that root system is going to coil. It's just not going to be great. I am finding more and more that I do this every year, that the bigger the container and the looser and larger the root system, the better the plant does. If you can strain the roots by letting that plant grow too long indoors and then they put it outside, the little root system is not strong enough to support the big green growth above. So if you're going to be starting your brassicas, your broccoli, your cauliflower, cabbage, all that, try and get them into larger containers and do not put them outside in the southwest area. That sun beating down will just mess them up. Move them over to the east side, even the north side. Just let them sprout, and do their thing over there. If you feel like they need some more light, go ahead and bring them into the sun, maybe in the evening or something like that. But you can do great transplants by just making sure you have a larger container and don't let those transplants bake out in the sun. You don't need to start them indoors. A single broccoli plant, Woofy 1038, will be fine in a 5-gallon bucket. And Nitin and Smita Vazirkar. I hope I got that right. Thank you so much for the $50 donation. I very appreciate it. And I'm sorry if I didn't get your name right. I struggle with that in my life, but I don't let that stop me when I'm trying to do things. Very, very appreciate it. All right, so questions look good. So next, now I started spinach about 3 weeks ago. I started lettuce 3 weeks ago. I have it under shade cloth. And if you're watching my ramblings, you see that it's kind of flopping over. So the soil temperature is cooler, but the ambient, the day temperature, the surrounding temperature is just too warm and it's getting tall and leggy. That's actually just a random tip. So when you're starting your cool weather crops indoors and you're doing it in the spring or something like that, and your house is 70 degrees, 72 degrees, they're under lights, usually your cool weather crops have enough light, but they get leggy because it's so warm house. So something to keep in mind, if you don't want your warm or you don't want your cool weather crops flopping over, you might want to get them started under the lights when you see them break the surface and germinate, and then do a combination of putting them outside during the day if it's not freezing, and then you bring them in at night and put them out. That just keeps them more stocky. It's the warmth of the indoors that sometimes makes those cool crops leggy. That's just a side note. Thank you so much, Angela Pickett. Very, very appreciated. So lettuce, spinach, and radishes. I put them in my area, Maryland Zone 7, 3 weeks ago under shade cloth. The radishes are this big, not one bulb formed. Too warm. So I take notes. I put down the date that I put the radishes in. Noted I put it in shade cloth. I'm just not going to do that again. So I will be putting in radishes this week because my temperatures are coming down, 60s at night, 80s during the day. I'm going to put my lettuce back in, my spinach back in, buy seed in the ground, and I'm going to make notes. And that's kind of what you have to do your first year is you have to, don't be afraid, don't put out your 100, whatever, spinach seeds. Put out maybe 20, and then another 20 in 2 weeks, and then another 20 in 2 weeks, and just take notes. And you're going to be able to figure out when's the best time to direct seed these cool crops in your ground in the fall in your area by just doing a little bit of experimenting. All right, so lettuce, spinach, radishes are going to go in now. So this is just to get the jump on there. I don't want you to feel like that, if you watch this video after we're done or you feel like you're behind, radishes can mature in as little as 25 days once they germinate. And with this warm soil, even in the fall, September, October, they're going to germinate quickly. So I will be planting radishes every 2 weeks, starting this week, maybe every 3 weeks, really probably I'm going to go probably into October. And I know I'm still going to get radishes. And you don't want to put 1,000 radishes in now because nobody gets 1,000 radishes when they all mature. So you put them in waves. Same thing with lettuce, in spinach, even though I'm recommending to direct seed that, maybe right now your garden just has pockets of space everywhere and you don't want to be going over to here to water the spinach, then over here for the lettuce, then over there for the beets or something like that. So if you want to, in larger cells, you can start lettuce and spinach and Swiss chard in seed cells because it's just a little flat, and it's a lot easier to carry that flat around and manage it till they get to size, and then you go and plant them in the garden. So I'm just giving you recommendations for direct seeding based on the warmth and the coming cool weather, but that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. I really enjoy sometimes just doing everything in a flat because you just take a watering can, you go over it real quick, it's done. I don't have to go out into the garden and kind of pop around everywhere. All right, I think I covered what I wanted to cover, and it's only 4:45. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I will, and I don't know if I caught this one, but thank you, Christine D. If I said it already, nothing wrong with saying thank you 2 times, and I appreciate Pete for doing $5. So let's just go to questions. So, throw out what you like growing. If you have a question on whether or not you can start something in a container. Let me rephrase that. I don't know what I was going to say. If you have questions about should you start them in starting cells or should you grow them in containers or where do they do best, just ask me the question. I'll figure it out. I say Urban Chicken Mama. So Kim and I, Callie Kim 29, we have a tomato contest. We may do it next year. Sometimes I just get so busy, it's hard to keep that up, but we want to try and figure out a tomato contest that everybody can kind of be involved in. I think that would be fun. All right, so let me read these questions, all related to fall gardening. Again, thank you everybody that donated. All right. I'm just looking for questions. If you water, okay, Lenny Arnold, question. Oh yeah, if you put question in bold print in the front, that makes it a lot easier for me to find. That makes a difference. And if you want to donate and put a question in there, that certainly helps too, but do a bold question. If you water in the morning after direct sowing and it's dry by midday, do you water again? So that's a great question. And the answer is you don't have to, but it's a good idea. So let's just take that question as, and I love questions because it allows me to be more interactive. Sometimes it's hard to kind of read off of an outline. So when you're direct sowing in the summer weather, that soil is going to dry like that. So you really want to be watering every other day. Soak it in. The seed itself sends a root down first before you see anything come to the top. And by the time the greenery comes, it has a nice root down there. And that water stays, down a couple of inches. So your plant's not going to die. But when you're first starting, for a good 7, 10 days, water every other day and really soak it in. Your seed starts will appreciate that. Once they germinate, keep them moist. Also, just because they germinate and they look pretty good, if the temperatures are getting into upper 90s and 100 degrees and it's baking that soil, that top inch of the soil, and generating 100-degree temperatures, it's possible that the sun can kill the plant. So not often, but it's possible. So you just want to make sure, you're looking at your weather patterns so that extreme summer heat is starting to come down to give your germinating seeds the best chance. Susan Chappell, good source for potato seeds. I don't have one. So I find like I order stuff in the spring, just different places, or I go to Tractor Supply, pick up stuff there. I also use the organic red and yellow potatoes from, organic stores or organic supermarket, and they work fine. As if you're asking for direct seed, I have grown Clancy potatoes from actual seed. They're actually pelleted because potato seeds are so small. And that's an All American Selections winner. And I recommend just go online, look for Clancy potato seeds, and you're actually getting seeds, and they grow extremely well. Ruben's question, I'm in 8B. Do I have time for another round of summer squash? So you need 45 days from germination. It's going to germinate in 3 to 5 days. So I would say, give it a try. It's going to be close, but you never know. And take notes. This way you know. Amanda, have you tried micro dwarf tomatoes in the fall? Some have shorter days to maturity. I want to try, but not set myself up to fail. So I haven't tried in the fall. I have grown determinate tomatoes later in the season, like planting by seed in July, and they've done fine. They're going to take about 55 days. They're going to germinate really quickly. They're also going to accelerate in their growth because it's so warm. That's the other thing by starting your fall garden now. They really accelerate in growth, and you just don't want them to get out of control, that they flower and all that. That's not going to happen necessarily with your tomatoes, but it's going to grow faster than you think. So if a dwarf tomato says 55 days to maturity, it may be sooner because it just grows a lot quicker. I would give it a try. Environmental Coffee House, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Jeffrey, question. My radish and beets planted 14 to goes are all leggy. The roots part are nearly all thin and above ground. Yep. And that's just quite possible because it's too warm. So probably for the radishes, you're going to have to plant again and make notes. The beets can actually work it out, and you'll still get a beet forming on there. But if it's been warm and the radishes are liking that 90-degree temperature, they get leggy. Like my radishes are this tall, long stem, no bulb, and they were just planted too early. Tonia's townhouse. Can I transplant my asparagus plants from containers to the ground for overwintering? Yeah, I mean, yes, you can. Period. Asparagus is pretty hardy. Just loosen up the space, drop the container, kind of plug right into there, and your asparagus will be fine. Bob asks, not exactly a fall garden question, but advice for watering blueberries and strawberries through the winter. So true winter, I don't. I just let them do their thing. So watering slows greatly here. In Maryland, we get lots of rain. So sometimes I'm not the best person for watering advice. So any of my blueberries that are in the ground, I don't even water them except maybe peak super hot weeks. In containers, I would water them more regularly. But once it's truly winter and it's cold, you water them in November, I let them go. I don't water anymore after that. Josh, how long does it take for diatomaceous to biodegrade into usable silicone? I don't know what that means. I don't know if I don't know the word, or it wasn't spelled right. I don't have an answer for that. I know that the diatomaceous earth that you're using is millions of years old. It's scraped from, usually places where there used to be the ocean, and it's little microscopic shells from sea life. That's pretty broken down. I don't know what you'd be waiting for, but I would think it's just going to stay as it is for a long time. I'm going to look it up afterwards and try and figure out what you're asking. Rosability question. I'm in California and gardening in 5 20-gallon containers, grow bags. I added a higher percentage of coco coir to try and compensate for the drought. Worried my containers are soggy and or lack of nutrients. So coco coir isn't going to make it soggy in a way that's damaging to your plant. If you're worried about nutrients, just use a water-soluble fertilizer now. You don't have to put in a ton, but maybe half strength water soluble, pour it into your plants, just let it kind of get into the soil. Do that more often than maybe you think if you're worried about that, but your plant should be okay. Rubens says, if my spring plant like tomatoes had hornworms, all right. If my spring plant like tomatoes had hornworms and my squash had squash vine borer, can I reuse the soil? Can you reuse the soil from your spring garden? So I understand exactly what you're saying. It's a good question. So here's the thing, and this is my personal opinion. You go to your first place to have a garden. Nothing is there. You fill up containers with your soil. You put in your plants. You dig your earth bed. You put in your plants. The insects show up. They find your plants. So you don't need to dispose of your container soil. You don't need to do something for your soil that's there because, thank you for the donation, Amanda, because the bugs find it. To really manage pests and disease, it's really just about understanding what shows up in your garden, and you do sprays and stuff like that ahead of time to manage them. So no, you don't need to get rid of your soil. Insects are going to find it, and maybe next year they don't find it. So don't over worry about it. All right, we still got 5 minutes. Let's see. Angela, any recommendations for where to get blueberry plants? I'm in Maryland, also near. Well, the big box stores will have them. They're okay. If you're buying blueberry plants, you always want at least 2. I go to Sun Nursery, which is out here in Ellicott City, but I would just look for your local nurseries and, places that you can support, maybe the smaller places. I prefer that over the big box stores. They can be a little bit expensive, but they're usually like 3-year-old plants and they're very large. So it really gives you a jump on the season next year rather than starting with something small and maybe paying $9. You're paying $20, but that blueberry plant is huge and it's going to really be producing. But I do like Sun Nursery. Garden of Glory. Hopefully your garden was a garden of glory this year and not beat up by the heat. Could you start kohlrabi in small trays and fertilize after? Yes. So, and fertilize. So I'm assuming you're saying in the small trays. So when you start seeds in a tray, they live off of the seed coat and they do their thing. when they're actually maybe, generally speaking, about this tall, have two sets of leaves, a very dilute water soluble fertilizer is great for them to just keep them growing and doing their thing. You don't want to use full strength because it can just concentrate in that starting mix and cause more problems than you want. So a very dilute water soluble fertilizer is great for seed starts. So I don't know. Maybe somebody can answer this. I don't get roly-poly. So Nevaeh says, how do I get rid of large infestation of roly-polies and stink bugs? The roly-polies just decimate a lot of my leafy greens. So I don't get those. Stink bugs I've never been able to really get rid of. I use insect dust on them. It seems to help. But I do a lot of hand watering. When I'm watering my plants, you water the base of the squash. They don't like the water. They climb up, and I'm just squashing them all the time. But if anybody has tips on roly-polies, please help her out. All right, a couple more questions. It's almost 5. Sue Davis, what would you recommend edible on privacy fence year round? Thank you. So year round, I don't think you're asking for it to stay green year round, but if you really want privacy, muscadines are like grapes. I have them growing over cattle panel. They are so dense that it's actually dark under there, and they produce delicious grape-like berries on there. So if you put them along your privacy fence, it's going to take a year, but they're going to fill that up, and I have to really constantly keep pruning these back. But that would just cover the privacy fence, and then for a good part of the season, nothing but leaves and edible berries on there. Pete asks, do you plant elderberry? I actually have 2 elderberries, and I'm eating the berries off of there now. They're not delicious. They're not terrible. I've not made wine out of them yet, but they're finally to a size. I've been protecting them from the deer, and I just go over and take handfuls of that. I throw them into the smoothie my wife and I make. And if you are, and this is kind of some of the things we're doing at Freetown Farm. So there's a lot of people that volunteer. We probably have 50 elderberry cuttings that are now about that big. So we're selling them, I think, for $8. And I think that's a pretty good price. We also have hibiscus and stuff that we sell for $4 in a little, a bigger container, but they're about this tall. So we're really trying, we sell plants to fund the greenhouse. We give plants away to people in need. We use those plants to grow food. We try and bring in lots of plants and sell them more at a discount so that we can, manage our costs, but then people can get a good deal. But we have elderberries there. Everybody should at least grow, I think, 2 elderberry trees. All right. Any last questions? So, Carrie Lee, I don't know the answer to that for the watermelons. I would just kind of be guessing. Watermelons can be tough in containers when the temperatures are 90 or 100 degrees. They basically bake, and they just need a lot of water. They need, they love the water, but the soil temperature can't really get high. Your cucumbers, your watermelons, your cantaloupe, if the container is just baking, the plants just don't do well. Sorry, I don't have a better answer. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I hope this gives you some confidence to maybe start your fall garden now. We got to shake off the heat of the summer. I know that I'm as beat up as some of my plants out there, but they're surviving. I'm taking out the old, I'm putting in the new, whatever can be saved, I'm trying to save. And I'm really looking forward to come September, cooler temperatures, leafy greens, root crops. Some of the tomatoes and peppers are hanging around. My 4th wave of cucumbers should be doing okay. So, take a deep breath, try and get some of those fall crops in the ground. All right, so no last questions. This I don't know the answer to this, so maybe someone can help Mary grow with me. She found nematodes, and I just read this at one of the comments I made. I don't know if that was you in one of my videos, but if people are getting nematode knot root, I don't know how to address that. I know there's beneficial nematodes, so anybody that uses beneficial nematodes or has advice for her, please let her know. I just couldn't give you good advice, and I don't want to just send you in the wrong direction. All right, you guys have a great Sunday, and I will talk with you again. I hope, at some point, I can do these more regularly on a Sunday. It'll be at different times. It'll be impromptu, but I'll a couple hours ahead of time. Thanks for watching.